Some games are fun for a weekend, and then you forget about them a few days later. But every once in a while, you play something so incredible that it completely changes your standards for gaming. The kind of game that makes every other world feel empty, every story feel weaker, and every combat system feel boring. And honestly, these 15 games did exactly that to me. After playing them, gaming just didn't feel the same anymore. What makes these games special isn't just the graphics or the gameplay, it's the feeling they leave behind. The late nights where you tell yourself, just one more mission, and suddenly it's 3 a.m. The moments that stay in your head for weeks after the credits roll. The characters you genuinely miss when the game ends. These are the games that completely pulled me into their worlds and ruined normal gaming for me forever. So if you're looking for games that truly feel unforgettable, trust me, you need to experience these. I still remember the first time I rode through the world of Red Dead Redemption 2 at night with nothing but a lantern and the sound of rain hitting the trees around me. And that's when it hit me. This game wasn't trying to entertain me like most games do. It was trying to make me live inside its world. Everything felt real. The way Arthur talks to people, the random strangers you meet on the road, the quiet moments around campfires. It honestly felt less like a video game and more like a memory I actually lived through. What surprised me the most was how attached I became to the gang. At first, I thought it was just another open-world game with good graphics, but slowly these characters started feeling like real people. I cared about them, I worried about them, and by the end of the story, man, I genuinely sat there staring at the credits feeling empty inside. Very few games have ever done that to me. Even simple things like riding your horse through the mountains during sunset somehow felt emotional. And after experiencing a world this detailed and immersive, so many other open-world games just started feeling lifeless. Red Dead Redemption 2 didn't just raise the bar for me, it completely destroyed it. Baldur's Gate 3 genuinely reminded me why I fell in love with gaming in the first place. I went into it expecting a solid RPG, but what I got was one of the most immersive experiences I've ever had. The moment I realized this game was special was when I noticed that almost every choice I made actually mattered, not fake choices, real ones. Conversations felt intense because I never knew what would happen next, and some decisions honestly stressed me out more than horror games do. I still remember sitting there for like 10 minutes trying to decide whether I should trust a character or betray them because the game made every relationship feel important. And somehow, every companion had their own personality, emotions, and secrets that slowly pulled me deeper into the world. What hit me the hardest was how alive everything felt. You could walk into a random area expecting nothing and suddenly end up in one of the craziest moments of the entire game. No two players experience this game the exact same way, and that's what makes it unforgettable. The freedom here is honestly dangerous because once you experience this level of player choice and storytelling, most RPGs start feeling painfully limited. Baldur's Gate 3 didn't just impress me, it made other role-playing games feel smaller afterward. The Witcher 3 was one of those rare games where I completely lost track of real life while playing it. I'd sit down planning to play for 1 hour, and somehow the sun would already be coming up outside. What made this game different for me wasn't just Geralt or the massive world, it was how every little story felt meaningful. Even random side quests felt better written than full stories in other games. I still remember helping strangers in tiny villages and ending up in situations that were dark, emotional, or honestly heartbreaking. And the craziest part is that the game constantly makes you question what the right choice even is. There were moments where I thought I made the good decision, only to realize hours later that I probably made everything worse. That feeling stuck with me. The world itself also felt unbelievably alive. Riding through forests during storms, walking into crowded cities, hearing monsters in the distance at night. Everything had this atmosphere that pulled me deeper in. And then there's the music, man. Some of those soundtracks are permanently burned into my brain. What hit me the hardest was how connected I became to the characters. By the end, it honestly felt like I had gone on a real journey with them. After experiencing storytelling and world building at this level, so many other RPGs just started feeling forgettable to me. The Witcher 3 didn't just set a standard, it became the standard.
You stand no chance against us.
Cyberpunk 2077 is honestly one of the biggest comeback stories I've ever seen in gaming. I know the launch was messy, but when I finally played the game in its current state, I completely understood why people became obsessed with it. The first thing that pulled me in was Night City itself. I've played a lot of open-world games, but this city felt different. It felt alive in a way that's hard to explain until you actually experience it yourself. Driving through the streets at night with neon lights everywhere, hearing random conversations, watching the city move around you, it genuinely felt like stepping into the future. But what really surprised me was the emotional side of the game. I expected cool action and crazy visuals, but I didn't expect some of these characters to hit me this hard emotionally. There were moments where I just sat quietly after a mission thinking about what happened. And the relationship between V and Johnny Silverhand slowly became one of my favorite dynamics in any game ever. The deeper I got into the story, the more I stopped feeling like a player and started feeling like I was actually living inside Night City. Even the soundtrack added so much energy and emotion to every moment. What hit me the hardest was realizing how lonely and beautiful this world could feel at the same time. After experiencing a world this immersive and cinematic, a lot of other open-world games started feeling safe and outdated to me. Cyberpunk 2077 went from being a game I doubted to a game I genuinely couldn't stop thinking about, and trust me, the next few games somehow get even crazier. Ghost of Tsushima was one of those games that made me stop moving just to look at the world around me. I'm not even kidding. There were moments where I completely forgot about missions because I was too busy riding through fields of flowers while the wind guided me across the island. The atmosphere in this game is unreal. From the very beginning, it felt calm, beautiful, and peaceful. But at the same time, there's this sadness underneath everything because you can feel Jin slowly losing parts of himself throughout the story. And that's what made the experience hit so hard emotionally. This wasn't just another samurai game with cool sword fights. It felt personal. Every duel felt intense. Every decision carried weight. And the combat itself was so satisfying that I genuinely didn't want fights to end. I still remember the first time I perfectly timed a standoff and took down enemies in seconds. It made me feel like an actual samurai movie character. But what really stayed with me after the credits rolled was the emotional journey. Watching Jin struggle between honor and survival made the story feel surprisingly human, and the soundtrack combined with those beautiful landscapes created moments that honestly felt unforgettable. Very few games make me feel peaceful and emotional at the same time, but Ghost of Tsushima somehow managed to do both perfectly. After experiencing a world this immersive and artistic, a lot of open-world games started feeling noisy and lifeless to me. Elden Ring completely destroyed my expectations for exploration in video games. I can still remember stepping out into the open world for the first time and realizing the game was basically telling me, go wherever you want and survive if you can. There were no giant arrows holding my hand every second, no endless tutorials, no safe path. And somehow, that made the experience feel more real and exciting than almost any game I've played before. Every time I thought I understood the world, the game would surprise me again with some hidden area, terrifying boss, or secret that made my jaw drop. What hit me the hardest was the feeling of discovery. I genuinely felt like an explorer instead of a player following objectives on a map. There were moments where I accidentally found places so beautiful and mysterious that I just stopped moving for a few seconds, trying to process what I was seeing. And then 5 minutes later, the game would absolutely destroy me with one of the hardest bosses imaginable. But weirdly enough, that difficulty made every victory feel unforgettable. I still remember beating certain bosses after failing over and over again and literally feeling my heart racing afterward. Very few games create that kind of emotional payoff anymore. And the atmosphere in Elden Ring is something else entirely. The world feels ancient, lonely, dangerous, and magical all at once. Every castle, cave, and ruined landscape feels like it has its own story hidden inside it. After experiencing this level of freedom and exploration, so many open-world games started feeling repetitive and predictable to me. Elden Ring didn't just feel like a game, it felt like a massive adventure I survived myself. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 honestly surprised me in a way very few games do anymore. The moment I started playing, I realized this game wasn't trying to make me feel like some unstoppable superhero. It wanted me to feel like a real person, surviving inside a brutal medieval world, and that made everything so much more immersive. Every fight felt dangerous, every decision mattered, and even simple things like traveling through forests or walking into towns felt incredibly grounded and believable. What hit me the hardest was how realistic the world felt without becoming boring. People reacted to the way I dressed, the choices I made actually changed situations, and the game constantly made me think before doing anything reckless. I still remember struggling in early combat, because Henry genuinely felt inexperienced at first, and honestly, that made his growth throughout the game feel even more rewarding. The deeper I got into the story, the more attached I became to the world and characters around me. There's this raw realism to everything that pulls you in completely. No flashy fantasy powers, no over-the-top nonsense, just a believable medieval journey that somehow feels more immersive than most modern RPGs. And the atmosphere is incredible. Riding through muddy roads during storms, hearing steel clash in intense sword fights, walking into crowded taverns full of life. It all feels so natural that you almost forget you're playing a game. After experiencing this level of realism and immersion, a lot of RPGs started feeling too artificial for me. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 made me realize that sometimes the most unforgettable worlds are the ones that feel closest to reality.
What now? Eh?
Detroit Become Human was one of the few games that genuinely made me question my own decisions while playing. From the very beginning, I could tell this wasn't just another story game where your choices barely matter. Every conversation felt important, every small action carried tension, and sometimes I was honestly scared to press a button because I knew someone's fate could completely change because of it. What made the experience unforgettable for me was how human these android characters started feeling over time. I still remember moments where I completely forgot they were machines because their emotions, fears, and struggles felt so real. Connor especially became one of those characters I couldn't stop thinking about. Watching him slowly evolve depending on the choices I made was honestly incredible. And then there's the atmosphere of the game, the music, the cinematics, the facial expressions. Everything works together perfectly to make every scene feel intense and emotional. There were moments where my heart was racing during simple conversations because I knew one wrong move could destroy everything. What hit me the hardest was realizing how attached I became to the characters by the end. I wasn't just trying to win anymore. I genuinely wanted them to survive and find peace. Very few games make choices feel this personal and stressful in the best possible way. And once you experience storytelling this interactive and emotionally immersive, a lot of other story-driven games start feeling way less impactful afterward. Detroit Become Human didn't just tell me a story, it made me feel responsible for it. And trust me, we still haven't reached the games that completely broke my expectations.
I'm outside the city, I'll let her go.
Resident Evil 4. Remake reminded me why survival horror games became legendary in the first place. From the second the game starts, there's this constant feeling that something is horribly wrong, and it never really lets go of you. I still remember walking into that first village and realizing the game wasn't just trying to scare me. It was trying to overwhelm me completely. The sound design, the atmosphere, the enemies screaming while chasing you down. It all felt insanely intense. And what surprised me the most was how perfectly the game balances fear and action. One moment you're carefully checking every corner because you're low on ammo, and the next moment, absolute chaos breaks loose and you're fighting for your life. It keeps your adrenaline high the entire time. But what really made this remake special for me was how polished and immersive everything felt. Leon feels more human, the world feels darker, and every location somehow feels burned into my memory. I genuinely found myself getting nervous before opening certain doors because I knew the game loved throwing unexpected nightmares at me. And even after all the action, there are moments where the silence itself becomes terrifying. What hit me the hardest was how addictive the gameplay loop became. The combat is so satisfying that even stressful fights feel rewarding, and every upgrade makes you feel slightly more confident right before the game humbles you again. After playing Resident Evil 4 Remake, a lot of horror games just stopped feeling tense enough for me. This game doesn't just create fear, it traps you inside it. God of War Ragnarok felt less like a game to me and more like an emotional journey that I genuinely didn't want to end. What hit me immediately was how personal everything felt between Kratos and Atreus. Yeah, the action is incredible and the boss fights are absolutely insane, but underneath all of that, this is really a story about family, loss, growth, and trying to become better despite your past. And honestly, that emotional side is what stayed with me long after I finished the game. I still remember some of those quiet moments where Kratos says very little, but you can feel everything through his voice and expressions. It made him feel more human than ever before, and then the game suddenly throws you into massive battles that feel like pure chaos in the best possible way. Every fight feels heavy and brutal. The Leviathan axe still feels unbelievably satisfying, and some of the late-game moments genuinely gave me chills because of how cinematic and intense everything became. But what really surprised me was how attached I became to the characters around Kratos. This world feels alive with stories, emotions, and relationships that actually matter. Even small conversations while traveling through the realms somehow made the journey feel special. And visually, man, there were moments where I just stopped playing for a second because the environments looked unreal. What hit me the hardest was realizing this wasn't just about saving the world. It was about watching characters struggle with destiny, grief, and who they want to become. Very few games balance epic action and emotional storytelling this perfectly. After experiencing something this cinematic and emotionally powerful, a lot of action games started feeling empty to me. God of War Ragnarök didn't just entertain me, it genuinely stayed with me. Alan Wake 2 honestly felt like stepping into someone else's nightmare and slowly losing my mind inside it. This game doesn't rely on cheap jump scares every 5 minutes. Instead, it creates this heavy psychological tension that stays with you even after you stop playing. I still remember walking through dark forests with only a flashlight while hearing strange sounds somewhere in the distance, and the entire atmosphere felt so unsettling that I genuinely didn't want to move forward sometimes. What surprised me the most was how unique and cinematic the storytelling felt. The game constantly blurs the line between reality and fiction, and there were moments where I honestly sat there confused in the best possible way, trying to piece everything together. And somehow, that mystery only pulled me deeper into the experience. The lighting, the music, the creepy environments. Everything works together perfectly to create this haunting atmosphere that almost feels dreamlike. But what really made the game unforgettable for me was the emotional weight behind the story. Alan feels broken, exhausted, and trapped, and over time you start feeling that same desperation yourself. Saga's side of the story also adds so much tension and mystery that I genuinely couldn't stop thinking about what would happen next. There are scenes in this game that feel more like psychological horror movies than actual gameplay, and some of them are permanently stuck in my head now. What hit me the hardest was how immersive the entire experience became with headphones on at night. It felt uncomfortable, intense, and weirdly beautiful at the same time. After playing Alan Wake 2, a lot of horror games started feeling predictable to me because this game isn't just trying to scare you, it wants to completely pull you into its madness. Metro Exodus was one of those games that completely pulled me into its world without needing non-stop action or crazy explosions every second. What made this game special for me was the atmosphere. From the very beginning, there's this feeling of loneliness and survival that almost never leaves you. I still remember sitting inside the train with the crew while hearing conversations in the background and slowly realizing these characters genuinely felt like real people trying to survive in a destroyed world. And that's what hit me the hardest about Metro Exodus. It feels human. Every journey across the wasteland feels dangerous, every bullet feels valuable, and every quiet moment somehow becomes memorable. The game constantly balances beauty and fear in such a unique way. One second you're exploring abandoned snowy landscapes that look weirdly peaceful, and the next second you're deep underground, terrified of what might be hiding in the dark. Playing with headphones at night honestly made the experience even more immersive because the sound design is incredible. You hear distant creatures, creaking metal, storms rolling in, and it genuinely feels like the world is alive around you. But what really stayed with me after finishing the game was the emotional journey with Artyom and the crew. There's this feeling of hope underneath all the darkness that makes the story surprisingly powerful. And unlike a lot of open-world games, Metro Exodus never felt bloated or repetitive to me. Every location felt handcrafted and meaningful. After experiencing this level of immersion and atmosphere, so many post-apocalyptic games started feeling generic afterward. Metro Exodus didn't just make me survive its world, it made me feel trapped inside it in the best possible way. Days Gone was one of the biggest surprises I've ever experienced in gaming because I honestly didn't expect to get this emotionally attached to it. At first, I thought it would just be another zombie survival game, but the deeper I got into the story, the more I realized this game had way more heart than people give it credit for. What hit me the hardest was Deacon himself. He feels broken, exhausted, angry, and lonely in a way that actually feels real. I still remember riding through empty roads on the bike while hearing his thoughts and slowly realizing how much pain this character was carrying inside him, and that bike becomes such a huge part of the experience too. Upgrading it, repairing it, running out of fuel in dangerous areas. It all somehow makes the world feel more immersive and personal. But the real moments that stayed with me were the quiet ones. Exploring abandoned places, listening to emotional conversations, watching Deacon slowly reconnect with people again. Those moments gave the game a lot of soul. And then, of course, there are the hordes. The first time I saw an actual massive horde rushing toward me, I panicked instantly. I don't think any zombie game has ever made me feel that level of pure chaos and fear at the same time. Running for your life while trying to survive against hundreds of freakers is an experience that genuinely gets your heart racing. But somehow, even with all the action, the game never loses its emotional core. After finishing Days Gone, a lot of open-world survival games started feeling empty to me because this game made me care about the journey, the world, and the characters in a way I didn't expect at all. And honestly, the final games on this list completely changed how I look at gaming forever. Death Stranding was one of the strangest gaming experiences I've ever had, and somehow, that's exactly why I couldn't stop thinking about it. At first, I honestly didn't even know what to expect. Delivering packages across empty landscapes sounded simple on paper, but the moment I started traveling through that world, something about it just clicked with me emotionally. There's this heavy feeling of isolation throughout the entire game that's hard to explain until you experience it yourself. Walking alone through mountains, rainstorms, and destroyed environments while soft music slowly starts playing in the background genuinely felt peaceful, emotional, and almost therapeutic at times. What surprised me the most was how connected I became to the journey itself. In most games, traveling from one place to another feels like filler. But here, the journey is the experience. Every step matters. Every delivery feels personal. And because the world is so dangerous and unpredictable, even reaching your destination safely can feel incredibly rewarding. I still remember moments where I struggled through rough terrain for what felt like forever, only to suddenly see another player's bridge or ladder left behind online, and weirdly enough, it made me feel less alone. That small sense of connection became one of the most powerful parts of the game for me. And then there's the atmosphere, the music, the visuals, the silence, the mystery surrounding the world. Everything feels unforgettable. What hit me the hardest was realizing this game isn't really about action or combat. It's about loneliness, connection, and continuing to move forward even when everything feels broken. Very few games make me feel emotions this unique. After experiencing something this different and immersive, so many other open-world games started feeling repetitive and shallow to me. Death Stranding didn't just feel like a game, it felt like an experience I'll probably never forget. Hogwarts Legacy genuinely made me feel like a kid again in the best possible way. The moment I arrived at Hogwarts for the first time, I could already tell this game was going to be special. Walking through those massive halls, hearing the music, watching the moving paintings, exploring hidden rooms, it honestly felt like stepping directly into the world so many of us dreamed about growing up. And what surprised me the most was how immersive everything felt. This wasn't just a Harry Potter game filled with references for fans, it actually made me feel like a student living inside that universe. I still remember spending way too much time just exploring the castle because every corner seemed to hide something magical. And the atmosphere at night is unbelievable. Flying across the map on a broom under the moonlight while the soundtrack plays softly in the background genuinely felt peaceful and unforgettable. But what really made the experience hit harder for me was the sense of freedom. Learning spells, building your own playstyle, discovering secrets, fighting dark wizards. The game constantly made me feel more connected to the world, and some of the environments are absolutely beautiful. There were moments where I completely forgot about the main story because I just wanted to exist inside this world a little longer. What hit me the hardest was realizing how rare it is for a game to recreate pure wonder like this. Hogwarts Legacy brought back that feeling of excitement and curiosity that a lot of games lose nowadays. After experiencing a world this magical and immersive, many fantasy games just stopped feeling as special to me.
That I don't write down.
And honestly, that's what makes gaming so unforgettable. Every once in a while, a game comes along that completely changes your expectations forever. The kind of experience that stays in your head long after the credits roll. These games didn't just entertain me, they pulled me into their worlds, made me care about their characters, and remind